Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to streamline the research, helping you get a quick grasp on the complex stories behind the headlines. Today we're tackling something really critical and, frankly, quite sensitive. It's this intersection of menopause, midlife aging, and why relationships sometimes break down during this time. People are even calling it menopausal divorce.
Yeah, and it's definitely more than just individual stories, isn't it? It feels like a systemic issue. So our mission today is really to unpack the research, look at the evidence linking these big hormonal shifts to marital problems, and then, trace the fallout, the legal side, the financial hits, the emotional toll, especially where the systems just aren't keeping up.
Okay, let's start with just how big this is. Some new research came out from the Family Law Menopause Project and Newson Health, and the headline finding is pretty staggering, honestly. A remarkable 7 out of 10 women, that's 73%, they blame perimenopause or menopause directly for their divorce or relationship breakdown. 73%, that's huge. And it immediately makes you think, doesn't it? Is that number so high because the symptoms themselves are just impossible for the relationship to withstand? Or maybe looking back, it gives a sort of concrete biological reason for things falling apart that maybe felt less clear at the time. Either way, the link is there. I mean, look at the timing. The peak age for divorce, right between 45 and 55.
Right when perimenopause typically starts.
Exactly. Perimenopause often kicks in during the mid-40s, and the average age for menopause itself is around 51. So this major biological shift lines up almost perfectly with the time when marriages are most likely to end. The correlation seems undeniable.
Okay, so let's get into the how. How does this transition actually cause so much strain? It's not just hot flashes, is it?
No, not at all. We're talking about potentially severe disruption. The sources show symptoms vary a lot, of course. But maybe 1 in 4 women experience symptoms that are genuinely debilitating. And over 60%, well, they report symptoms significant enough to actually change their behavior.
Change their behavior. Well, it often falls into, say, 3 main buckets that really hit relationships hard. First, mood changes. And not just feeling a bit down. We're talking intense anxiety, sudden deep low moods, real irritability. Some describe it as just hormonal chaos.
Chaos sounds about right.
Then there are the cognitive issues. This is the brain fog everyone talks about. Memory lapses, difficulty concentrating, feeling confused. It can be really unsettling. One woman in a study actually said menopause should be considered in divorce cases when women show, quote, irrational and non-characteristic behaviors.
Wow, that suggests feeling completely unlike yourself. That must be terrifying.
It absolutely can be. And the third area, which is often hard to talk about but critical, is the impact on intimacy. Low libido is very common. Vaginal dryness, pain during sex. These become real issues for many. And think about the impact the sources showed. Half of the women surveyed worried that this lack of sex could actually end their relationship. Experts confirm this intimacy drop-off is really common.
Okay, so you've got mood swings, brain fog, intimacy issues. It sounds like a perfect storm for conflict.
It really is. And it leads to this incredibly sobering statistic. 67% of women said their perimenopause or menopause symptoms led to more domestic abuse and arguments. That includes things like gaslighting, financial control, coercive behavior.
That's deeply concerning. The physical changes are actually escalating conflict and abuse.
Exactly. The physiological disruption can become a catalyst. And that's partly why we're seeing this rise in what they call gray divorce, divorce among adults age 50 and older.
Right.
In the U.S. now, 36%, over a third of all divorces, involve someone 50 or older. Long-term relationships are fracturing right during this transition period, often because it's just not understood or managed well.
So when these relationships do end, what does the emotional fallout look like? Is it different for men and women?
The research suggests it often is, yeah. There was a Danish study looking at breakups in the 50 to 70 age group. It found a pretty stark difference in mental health responses. Women significantly increased their use of antidepressants in the 4 years leading up to the breakup.
4 years before.
Yes. About 6% of women, compared to just 3.2% of men. The researchers think this points to the mental health costs of the relationship ending, falling much more heavily on women.
That makes sense, especially if they're also dealing with the hormonal shifts internally at the same time. It's a double burden.
It really seems to be. The internal distress of menopause plus the relationship stress. It highlights just how vital the partner's reaction and support really is.
And we actually have proof that partner support helps, right? There was that Iranian study.
Yes, exactly. That study was fascinating. They specifically trained husbands about menopausal health. And the result? Their wives reported significantly higher marital satisfaction afterwards, especially in areas like communication, handling conflict, even just enjoying leisure time together.
So simply educating the partner makes a measurable difference. That feels like a really practical takeaway.
It absolutely is. It suggests targeted education for partners could be a really effective, relatively low-cost way to boost stability during this challenging time, because that knowledge creates a buffer, right? And the health of the partnership feeds back into the physical symptoms too.
How so?
Well, other research shows that low marital adjustment, basically, a poorly functioning relationship, significantly increases female sexual dysfunction during menopause. And it becomes a cycle. When the wife experiences sexual dysfunction, it then increases the likelihood of the husband experiencing it too. One study found over 77% of male spouses had issues when their wife was menopausal and experiencing dysfunction.
So the couple's overall relationship health and their individual sexual health are just completely tangled up together.
Precisely, they're intertwined.
Okay, amidst all this difficulty, though, there was one finding that seemed almost positive, or at least surprising, about health after divorce.
Ah, yes, that was quite counterintuitive, wasn't it? One study found that compared to women who stayed married, those who divorced or separated after menopause actually saw some favorable changes in health markers.
Favorable. Like what?
Things like a reduction in BMI and waist circumference, and also reported improvements in their diet quality and levels of physical activity.
Huh. So divorce was healthier. That seems odd.
Well, the conclusion isn't necessarily the divorce itself is a health cure, obviously, but it really forces you to ask a tough question. Was the ongoing stress of being in perhaps an unsupportive marriage, or constantly managing a partner's lack of understanding about her health state,
I
was that actively harming her physical health?
I see. So separation, while incredibly stressful in its own ways, might have given these women the space or autonomy they needed to actually focus on their own well-being.
That seems to be the implication. Maybe it was impossible to prioritize their health within the dynamics of that specific marriage.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From the personal and the health side to the systems involved, specifically family law. You mentioned earlier the systems aren't keeping up.
Yes, and this is where a personal crisis can get compounded into a potential long-term financial disaster, particularly for women. The research points to, frankly, a shocking lack of understanding within the family law profession itself.
A lack of understanding? Or
What?
just silence?
Both, really.
Mhm.
A huge part is the silence. Get this, 86% of women going through divorce didn't bring up menopause with their lawyer. And maybe even more surprisingly, 97% of the family lawyers didn't raise it themselves.
97%. So lawyers are dealing with clients who might be showing classic symptoms, mood swings, cognitive issues, relationship breakdown, and the potential underlying biological cause isn't even part of the legal conversation.
Exactly. It's often completely ignored. And this lack of dialogue is critical when it comes to the outcomes, especially financial settlements.
Why is it so critical for the money side?
Because if the symptoms aren't acknowledged, then the consequences of those symptoms often aren't acknowledged either. And a major consequence can be a reduced ability to work. Think about it. Severe brain fog, anxiety, fatigue, that impacts earning capacity, right? The women surveyed certainly felt it. 76% felt lawyers and judges desperately need training on menopause to factor it into cases. And interestingly, 81% of the lawyers and judiciary surveyed agreed they currently fail to understand or recognize the impact.
So even the legal professionals know there's a gap, and this directly disadvantages women financially.
Yes, the data suggests it does. 65% of family lawyers themselves agree that women are likely being disadvantaged in financial settlements, precisely because the effect of perimenopause or menopause on their ability to work, maybe needing to go part-time or leave work altogether, it just isn't properly recognized or counted for by the court.
And this has long-term consequences, obviously.
Huge ones. More than half the women surveyed said this whole transition had made it harder or will make it harder for them to save for retirement. It directly impacts their ability to build up pensions.
Can we put numbers on that financial gap?
We can. And they're pretty stark. Research consistently shows divorce often leaves men financially better off, maybe boosting income by about a third. But for women, they typically lose more than a fifth of their income. And the pension situation really highlights it.
How bad is the pension gap?
For divorced women aged 55-64 in the UK, the average pension pot was found to be around £19,000.
19,000?
£19,000. Compare that to similar men whose average pot was £100,000.
Devastating difference.
It is, and it shows how the legal system's goal, often aiming for a clean break financially at the time of divorce, can really clash with a woman's biological reality and her potentially diminished earning capacity during these absolutely crucial pre-retirement earning years.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
Where does this menopausal divorce spike fit into the bigger picture of divorce trends, say, in the US?
It's interesting context. So the overall divorce rate in the U.S. has actually been going down since the 1980s.
Really? Why is that?
Well, it's largely because marriage is increasingly concentrated among adults with higher education levels, and that group tends to have a lower risk of divorce to begin with. But the story for older adults is completely different.
That's the gray divorce trend you mentioned.
Exactly. That rate for people 50 and over basically doubled between 1990 and 2010, a huge jump. Now, more recently, that rate seems to have stalled a bit for the sort of middle-age group, the 50 to 64s. But, and this is the really interesting part, the divorce rate is still increasing for the oldest group,
Yeah.
adults age 65 and older.
So divorce is actually shifting even later in life now.
It appears so. It suggests divorce is moving further into what we typically think of as retirement age.
And are these long marriages ending?
Yes, the length of marriages ending in divorce is also getting longer. The median went from about 10 years back in 2008 up to 12 years in 2023. And while, a lot of divorces still happen relatively early on, about 40% in the first decade, a significant chunk, 22% over a fifth, are now happening after 25 years or even longer together.
25 years plus. So these are couples who've built a whole life together.
Absolutely. And it tells us that many of these long-term couples are hitting that challenging midlife hormonal transition, the potential empty nest phase,
Right.
and the run-up to retirement all around the same time.
It sounds like a potential triple threat.
That's a good way to put it. Hormonal changes, life stage changes, financial pressures.
Yeah.
It's a lot to navigate simultaneously.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've seen this really powerful evidence-based link between the hormonal chaos of midlife and marriage breakdown. And it's made worse by a kind of systemic blindness in family law, which then leads to these really severe, disproportionate financial consequences, especially for women.
Absolutely. The challenge of navigating this midlife transition is clearly immense. But the research also offers hope, doesn't it? It shows that knowledge, communication, and support are incredibly powerful buffers. That Iranian study training husbands, that's vital evidence. And maybe we should all just take the advice given by one woman in a study speaking to partners. She said, you need to stand beside your partner. You need to support them. You do not need to solve this problem. You can't solve it. Just be there and listen.
Just be there and listen. That sounds like simple advice, but clearly it's what's missing in far too many situations during this incredibly difficult period.
Yeah, that empathy seems key.
So, for you, our listener, reflecting on all this, here's our final provocative thought for you to take away. We've seen how the legal system often fails to recognize the real impact of the menopausal transition in divorce, hitting women ending long-term marriages particularly hard financially. If the goal of the law is meant to be equity, and we know education and support can make a difference on a personal level, what truly systemic, perhaps even legally mandated preventative measures could be put in place, beyond just medical care or basic partner support? What could help more marriages weather this hormonal volatility of midlife, or at least ensure that financial security isn't so drastically compromised if a separation does happen during this vulnerable time? Something to think about.